Another one is a... Hi everybody, my name is Kelsey and we're about to get very, very nerdy with the mid-year freakout tag. So now that it is nearing the end of June, we've officially kind of hit the middle of the year, so it's time to do my favorite, honestly it's one of my favorite tags to do, and that is the mid-year freakout tag, which is basically exactly what it sounds like. It's mid-year stuff and you kind of look towards the second half of the year. There are about 15, there's about 15 questions in this tag. It was originally created by Chami, who I do not believe that she has a YouTube channel anymore, but she was a lot of fun and I really enjoyed her stuff, so if you'd like to check her out, I will leave her name down below. But let's just dive in. It's the same every single year. I'll leave my last year's up above if you'd like to check it out, but let's just dive right in. The first question is the best book that you have read so far this year. And this one is not really a surprise. I mean, it is and it isn't. It's The Fourth Wing. I jumped on the hype train for this one. Actually, it's my friend Lauren's fault. You guys have met her. She jumped on the hype train and then basically told me to read it, and here we are. And I am obsessed with this book. It is amazing and I love it, and I'll talk more about it in my wrap up because I read it in June. But I understand the hype. I get the hype. I agree with the hype, and I am addicted to this series. And I don't have a copy, clearly, because it's literally nowhere. So one of these days, once the hype dies down maybe a little bit, I will be able to pick up a copy of this book. But I love this one. It's fantasy romance story that revolves around a war college and dragons and dragon writing, and it's a lot of fun and I really, really enjoy it. And I just love the character of Violet, which is the main character. But this one is definitely my favorite so far. It has kind of put me in a little bit of a book hangover, this and reading the Avatar series, so we can blame it for derailing my reading this summer. The next one is the best sequel that you have read this year, and that is for sure going to go to Kingdom of the Cursed by Carrie Maniscalco, which is the second book in the Kingdom of the Wicked series, which I read earlier this year. I want to say it was sometime in the spring, I can't remember. It's a trilogy and I devoured the entire series and fell in love with it, and this is just, it's so good. I love, love, love this series. It's fantastic. If you love that fantasy romance, if you are a Sarah J Maas fan, I think this is definitely a series for you. This one follows our main character Amelia, and in the first book, her twin sister gets brutally murdered at the very, very beginning, and in a very specific way that has been a trend, that a few women have died very, very similarly. And so she ends up teaming up with Wrath, who is a demon from hell, or one of the princes of hell, because he has his own reasons why he's trying to figure out what happened and what's kind of causing all of these murders. It is fantasy because they are witches, so they do have this magical power, and the first book is just the two of them trying to figure out what's going on. And then of course we dive into way more. This was a fantastic sequel. I'm always weary when it comes to sequels because sometimes a lot of series hit that sequel slump, but not this one. This one was amazing. I liked this one more than the first one, which saying something because I really enjoyed the first one. But yeah, this one, chef's kiss. I loved it. The next one is a new release that you haven't read yet, but you want to. And this one literally came in the mail 10 minutes ago, I think. It came today. It came out a couple of days ago, and that is The Shadow Cabinet. And this is by Juno Dawson. This is the second book in the HMRC trilogy by this author. The first one obviously is HMRC, which is Her Majesty's Royal Coven. It is a fantasy story. It's fantastic. I really enjoyed the first one. It follows these four women who are all witches, and it takes place in this world where the HMRC, which is in our world known as the tax department, they have a hidden meaning, and it's Her Majesty's Royal Coven, and it's basically a coven of witches, and it's the governing body for witches, and witches are significantly more powerful than the men in the society, and I can't remember exactly what they're called. I guess just warlocks. And so they have their own little society, but the witches are the ones who are kind of ruling everything. And so we follow these four women who knew each other when they were younger, and they each have different perspectives, and it kind of follows this kid who is thought to be the antithesis of this really big, powerful, bad event that's supposed to happen. And so it's the different sides of that debate. It revolves around trans rights. The author herself is trans, so it does come from an own voices author and some representation that way. And I just really enjoyed the first one, and it ended in such a dramatic cliffhanger that my jaw dropped. So we have the second one that just came out. I'm very excited about it. I'm hoping to get to it relatively soon. We'll see what happens with that. But yes, this one I'm so excited about, and it's a new release, and I can't wait to get to it. The next question is your most anticipated releases for the rest of the year. So the ones that haven't come out yet. And I have two that I'm really, really anticipating. One more than the other. Actually, no, I'm excited about both of these. The first one is A Curse of True Love. And this is the final book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber, this trilogy. I am very excited about it. I loved the first one. I devoured the second one because I enjoyed the first one so much. And this is the final book in this trilogy, and I just cannot wait to get my hands on it. It comes out in like September, I want to say, so it's a little bit later in the fall, maybe not quite September. Yeah, September, October, somewhere there. And this series basically follows our main character, Evangeline, who in the beginning of the book, the person that she's convinced that she is in love with is getting married to somebody else. And she is convinced that there's more going on. So she comes to the Fate of Broken Hearts, which is Jax. And she basically asks him to stop the wedding. And they create a bargain, and he does. And so it's their story. There's way more to it than that. That's just barely scratching the surface because some stuff happens at the very beginning, which like spirals the rest of the series. But it's the two of them working through some stuff. It's got some mythology in it. It's got all that fun stuff. And I love it. I think it's a lot of fun. I love the tension between Jax and Evangeline, and I'm really excited to see how the next book's going to go based on how the second book ended, because pretty big cliffhanger. I mean, both of the first book and the second book had a pretty decent cliffhanger, but the second one was significantly more of a cliffhanger to me, the first one. But this is the final book, and I'm really excited about this one. So this one's, I think, the one that I'm the most excited about, but I'm also really excited about a new book. I'm not sure if there's not really a cover that's been announced, I don't think. That is A Goblin of the Glade, and this is by Mackenzie Catron, and this is the second book in her Numbia trilogy. I read the first book, which is The Daughter for the Trolls, last year, I think it was, and I'm on her street team again, so I'm very excited to see the cover and talk about it when it comes out, and maybe I'll get an arc of that one as well. I got an arc of the first one and just devoured it. And this is, I think it's a companion series, so they don't really have to do with each other, so I don't know what the second one's going to be like. I don't really have any information about it, but I loved the first one so much. It's a YA fantasy. It was fantastic. Cannot wait for the second one. The next one is your biggest disappointment for the year, and this one I think has to go to Stupid Love Comedy. I don't have a copy of it anymore. I have unhauled it, but it is a manga series that is, I had it bind up. It's 3 volumes long, and I loved the first one. The first one was so good. It really hooked me. I fell head over heels for our characters. I thought it was going to turn into this really amazing thing, and then it just went straight downhill, and then it ended in a very abrupt manner. And so the end of the book were not great. So the first one, the first volume, I think I read last year, and it was really great, and that's kind of why I wanted to continue, and then it just kind of let me down. So I'm gonna go with that one because it started off so well. The next one is your biggest surprise, and I think for me, I'm not sure what my biggest surprise. I mean, I have an idea. I wrote something down, but so I'm hesitant to call this a surprise because I thought I was going to like it. I'm not sure. I thought I was going to love it is really where I'm at. And that is The Bridge Kingdom. And this kind of set off the chain of events. I read this in February for one of the Booktube Made Me episodes that I did. This one was on Becca. She reads a lot of fantasy romance, and not a lot. She reads a lot of fantasy, and fantasy romance is one of her like subgenres that she enjoys. And so she really liked this book, and it's a fantasy romance book. I didn't really know what to expect. I heard good things. I heard mixed things. I thought I was going to enjoy it. I really did think I was going to go in and enjoy it. I didn't think I was going to hate it, but it kind of took over my soul. And I only had the first book in the series on that list, and I ended up reading the first 2 books back to back because it's one arc. The series is 6 books long, and there's only 4 out right now, and so it has 3 arcs basically. So the first 2 was one set of characters, the second 2 was another, and the third 2 are another. So now I can continue with the other 2 because the 4th one's come out, but this one took me heart and soul, and it really started this fantasy romance kick that I've been on this year. I've always enjoyed fantasy romance. I know you guys are probably gonna get so tired of me talking about fantasy romance at some point, but I've always kind of been in love with it. I always enjoy romance and I enjoy fantasy books, so I just figured that I liked the romantic elements in fantasy, but I never went out of my way to specifically find fantasy romance books, and that's kind of the mood I'm in right now. That's all I want to read. So this really kicked that off, and I think that's why I would say it's my biggest surprise, because it really kicked off the events of this year, but I didn't think it was going to take me heart and soul like it did. And it's definitely one of my favorites of the year, I think. The next one is a new author that's a new favorite author, whether it's new to you or just new as like a debut author. And for me, I'm going to go with new to me, and that is KJ Sutton. And she wrote the Fortuna Sworn series, which is another one that I've really been like head over heels in love with. I've read the first 2 in that series. There are 4 out right now. She's got 2 more in the series planned. And I want to read all things by this author because I just fell for her characters. I think they're really, really good. I think her writing is really good. Her character development is really good. And her storytelling is fantastic. And then also fantasy romance. So you've got all of that like wrapped up. And she does trauma, in my opinion, from an outsider who is not like, the rep does not represent me. So I can't really say on that part. But I think she writes trauma pretty well, similarly to how I felt Sarah J. Maas wrote trauma when it came to like those types of situations. And so it has similar vibes in my head, and I really enjoy Sarah J. Maas's writing. So of course I also really enjoyed KJ Sutton's writing as well. So she's one that I have always known about. I didn't like discover her this year, but this is the first year I've read anything by her, and I am in love. The next one is your new fictional crush, and I have to go with Wrath from the Kingdom of the Wicked series by Carrie Maniscalco. I love him. He gives me the same vibes, very different, but he gives me that whole like hard on the outside, gray morality, but good inside kind of person that Reese from ACOTAR gives me, that Xaden from Fourth Wing gives me. He has those vibes, and that's like an archetype that I'm obsessed with, and I love the whole like hard exterior, soft interior kind of person. The like, I would do anything for my person character, and that's what he is. And so I love him. Like, I was sitting down to make the answers to this tag, and even though I've read Fourth Wing and all of my answers wanted to be something with Fourth Wing, when I got to this one, Wrath was the first person that came to mind. So I love him. He's amazing. And if I haven't convinced you to read the Kingdom of the Wicked series yet, this is your sign that you should, because it's amazing. On the flip side, the next one is, who is your favorite character so far that you've read or discovered this year? And that's definitely Violet from Fourth Wing. I think she is just so strong, and I really love her story because this book, which I didn't realize until I was really pretty far into it, this book has chronic fatigue representation within it, chronic illness representation with Violet specifically, and she is sent to this war college to be a dragon rider, and that's a very tough thing to be, like, let alone take the fact that you have to ride this animal and like create the muscles in your legs and arms to ride an animal. It's very brutal. It's a war academy, so she's like learning how to fight, and she has a chronic illness where her like joints and bones are very fragile, and therefore she's in pain a lot of the time. Take that into account, and she's still over here like kicking ass. So I love her. She is such a strong main character, and was so fun to read about, and I cannot wait for the sequel to come out this year. I am obsessed. I'm on the hype train, you guys. So she is definitely a character that I love her. The next one is a book that made you cry. Surprise, surprise, it shouldn't be. It's Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. I sobbed like a child at the end of this one. He has a way of like writing these very beautiful stories in such a simple way, yet also like having all the emotions. This one, I'm sure many people know what this book's about, but we follow our main character Wallace, who dies at the beginning of this book, and he's kind of in limbo, and this limbo takes place at a tea shop, and the tea shop is run by Hugo, and Hugo's job is basically to help spirits who are in limbo figure out what they need to figure out before they kind of move on, and it's their friendship that turns into more. And of course, because this book is all about death, it definitely has some harder topics in it, but I think it was done really well so that it's not like overpoweringly sad. And there's just something, like the end just broke me about 5 different ways. So yes, sobbed like a child with this one. Knew that going in. The next one is a book that makes you happy. So for this one, I'm going to go with The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. I always get the name wrong. It's just a very complicated name. This is such a fun story. It's really, if you like, oh, I do this every time. What is it called? House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. I think you'll like this one. It's more romance heavy and it's more goofy, I think, than that one. We follow our main character Mika, who was a witch, and it takes place in the UK, where they basically like super hide their powers. Like their partners, a lot of the partners don't know that they have magical powers, and so it's unsafe for multiple witches to kind of like be in the same place. And she gets reached out because there's this house, I think it's called the Nowhere House, and in this house there are 3 young witches, all under the ages of like 10, I think, and they don't know how to control their magic, and so they're kind of causing a lot of issues, and so she's asked to come train them, and so she does. And so she comes to this house. It's very found family, and there's a grumpy librarian there that is just fun. But you've got these 3 kids that are just super, you know, some of them are really, really sweet, and some of them are like, I'm not sure about you, and they're just a lot of fun. And then Mika is just a super fun, personal, like her personality is just like bubbly, even though she's got like kids out to get her, and this librarian who's just grumpy all the time, and also some stuff from her past is not like the easiest to live through. So she's got a lot of reasons to not be the super bubbly nice person, and she just is the super bubbly person. So I love this one. I literally squealed the entire time I was reading it. It's super cute. I love it. I love it. I love it. I don't know how else to say it. It just made me happy. The next one is your favorite book to film adaptation that you saw this year. And this one is, it kind of counts a little bit. And for me, it's Queen Charlotte, which is the spin-off Bridgerton series that Netflix put out a couple of months ago, maybe a month ago. It technically isn't based on a book, but there is a book out, but it's based on the Bridgerton series, so that's kind of where I'm going with that. I really haven't watched that many adaptations this year, but I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was really fascinating. It's only 6 episodes, so it's a relatively short, it's a mini series, and I don't know if they're going to do any more. They ended it in a way that like it felt like a good ending, but I also wanted more from it, so I would be happy if there was another season, but I don't know if we're going to get one, and I really enjoyed it. So it's just kind of like the story of Queen Charlotte and how she became the queen from the Bridgerton series. Now, Queen Charlotte is not in the books. She's just a film Bridgerton Netflix adaptation character that was created, but her story is fascinating. And Shonda Rhimes and Julia Quinn, I think, co-wrote a book called Queen Charlotte. So there is technically one out now, but it's based on a book series. So that's kind of where I'm going. But I really haven't watched that many, but I really enjoyed this one. I thought it's quite good. The next one is your favorite video or videos that you've done so far this year. And I have a video and then like a series. So the video that I think I'm the most proud of, I really enjoy my vlogs, and I really like having themed vlogs. And at the very beginning of the year, I did this vlog that was books that I wish I had read last year. And it included, I think, 4 books that were on my list of books that I wanted to read last year and I never got to. So I took the time at the beginning of the year to really get around to some books I was excited about. And I found some new favorites. The Secret Society was on there. What's About a Broken Heart was on there. Things like that. So I loved that vlog series because it really helped me kickstart the year in a positive way and reading a bunch of books that I might not have made time for otherwise. So that's what I'm really proud of. And then I'm also really proud of my Simplify My series here on YouTube. I started that this year with the hopes of getting through the book series that I have started and not finished, especially the ones that are like 3 or 4 more than trilogies length of books. And it's a series that I've started where I've read the first book in the series and that's it. And it's my hope of getting through more. And I've done, I think, only 2 installments of that. So I'll leave both of those videos linked above if you'd like to check it out, or down below in the description if you want to check those out. But I'm pretty proud of those. And I think they've been helping my reading here. So that's been fun. The next one is the most beautiful book that you have bought, received, whatever, acquired in some way this year. I think the question is bought, but I am changing it to be received. And I am going to say my beautiful Fairy Loot edition of The Foxglove King by Hannah Witten, because it's just, first off, let's look how beautiful all the purple is. It has these beautiful floral sprayed edges. My favorite color is purple. I love floral things. This book was made for me. I love Fairy Loot editions. I think they're pretty, and then they have like these beautiful end pages, and then the hardcover is really pretty. There's just a lot about this book that is genuinely stunning, and I really, really love this. So I'm hoping to get to this one soon. I have plans, hopefully really soon, to read this one. It's a fantasy, I think it's a fantasy romance book, and I have heard good things about this one. My aunt, who read the Kingdom of the Wicked series that I love because I told her to read it, also liked this one, not to the same extent, but really enjoyed it. So the fact that we both enjoy that gives me hope. She's my fantasy person. We talk about fantasy books a lot, and it's a lot of fun. But I'm really excited about this one. I don't really remember what it's about. It follows a girl named Lore, and she has certain types of magic that ties her to a city, even though she doesn't want to be in that city. And she ends up running poisons for the city's underbelly and gets caught. And she's like, all right, that's it. I'm definitely going to die. But the king actually instead of like doing that, he like shoves her into his court. And so it's that. And then she's got a couple of suitors. So maybe there's a love interest or like a love triangle. You've got a guard, and then you've also got the king's ne'er-do-well heir. So that looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited. Fantasy romance, what can I tell you? And the last question is the book or books that you need to read by the end of the year. So I have 3. I always pick like 2 or 3 for this question because I can't just pick one. So obviously the first one's going to be Foxglove King. Again, hoping to get this one. We'll see if I can fit it in next month, but that's my goal, is to read that one soon. I also want to fit in another Fairy Loot book that I've got, which is Belladonna by Adeline Grace. Again, another beautiful floral purple story. I've heard good things about this one. The sequel to this is supposed to come out later this year, and of course Fairy Loot is going to do special editions of those since they did the first one, so I want to read this one to make sure that it's going to be worth it to purchase the rest. This one is another, I think, fantasy romance as well. Shock. We follow our main character, Signa, who has been raised by a bunch of different people. She always has guardians that something happens to them for some reason. And so she finally ends up with the elusive Hawthorne family, which is really, really eccentric, super gloomy. The matriarch of the family has passed away. So the father of the family throws all these parties. The daughter is really, really sick, and the son is just trying to keep control of the estate. And one day she runs into the ghost of the mother, who says that her death was not an accident, that she was poisoned. And our main character is like, oh, okay. So she kind of starts to investigate that. And then it sounds like she runs into Death himself. Yep, right here. She makes an alliance with Death himself. So sounds good. We'll see. Feels like a fall book, but we shall see. And the last one is another fantasy romance, and that is A Duel with the Vampire Lord. This is by Elise Kova. This is the most recent book in her Married to Magic series, which is a series of standalones that takes place in the same world. I've read the first 2. The first one was A Duel with the Elf King. The second one was Dance with a Fey Prince. I read both of those a couple of years ago. This one came out last year, and I just haven't made time for it. It's a vampire story, but it's fantasy romance, and I'm very excited about it. And I did find out that there's a new one that's planning on coming out this fall from this author in this series. Very excited about it. So we follow our main character, Florine, who is part of this hunting group that protects the vampire hunters. And it says here that she's pretty sure that this is like her job. She's happy with her place until her brother is dying at the hands of the vampire lord, and she makes a switch and kind of like creates a bargain. So he takes her instead, but like doesn't kill her. I don't know. It says Snow White Beast, Beauty and the Beast. So I'm excited to see how it's going to go. It's kind of thick for her stories, but I really enjoy her writing, and her fantasy romance are great. Kind of like new adult stories if you want a little bit more than adult, or a little bit more than YA, but not as much as like super smutty adult books. And also the characters are a little bit older, but we'll see. I don't love vampires, but I'm very interested in this one. So that's another one that I'm hoping to get to this year. And that's it. That is a look at my answers for the mid-year freakout tag. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, I will leave the questions down below if you would like to do this yourself. But if you don't, I would love to know if you could just answer one question in the entire tag in the comments. I would love to know what you were planning on getting to throughout the rest of the year, kind of what your mandatory books are that you want to read by the end of the year. I would love to know that. But if you like this video, and I very much hope that you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you'd like to be part of this awesome growing family. I've also got all my social media down there as well as other fun bookish links, so check all that out, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!